The Locked On Podcast Network presents the College Sports Big 3 in 30. The three biggest stories in college sports. From our local experts at the Locked On Podcast Network. We bring you the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 30 minutes. The College Sports Big 3 in 30 starts now with the biggest story in college sports.
Kyle Whittingham offered an update about his decision about when or if he will return for next season. And
you are Locked On Utes, your daily podcast on the Utah Utes.
Michelle, got to talk about everything that Kyle Whittingham laid out in his press conference. He talked about Isaac Wilson, what happened with the injury, also just some other interesting things like some players who already indicated their potential desire to come back for Utah. But we have to start with the future of Kyle Whittingham and then Cam Rising. Kyle Whittingham, when asked about his future, stated that it's one of those things that he is going to take his time and will evaluate his future after the season. And the decision, this was by far the biggest thing he said to me. His decision will be about what's best for the program, not himself. That to me is very interesting wording because we know Kyle Whittingham is the ultimate competitor. And there's part of him that may not want to go out with a season like this. But when he makes a statement like that, what's best for this program moving forward, that to me also could indicate that maybe I'm not the best guy to lead this going forward. So I said recently, I feel like it's 50-50, like 51-49 about if he's going to come back or retire. Like it still feels like there's a lot of ways that this can go. And I mean, a comment like that, I think points to how this really could be, this Friday could be the last game Kyle Whittingham coaches at Utah. It's a very real possibility, right, Michelle?
Absolutely. I think anything and everything is kind of on the table at this point for the Utes. They have a lot of tough decisions to kind of work through and make. And that's going to start, I think, with some really tough self-evaluations, both from, head coach on down, even to players. And I think it's an unfortunate part of this industry, but what's happened this year, kind of unacceptable based off of where this program has gone to. So it kind of points to that there just might be some really, like I said, tough, heartbreaking decisions that are made as far as what the future of this program is ultimately going to look like. And yeah, I mean, if you're taking Whit's words at face value, to me, that sounds like someone that maybe is contemplating, I don't want to say doubt, that's maybe a little bit too strong of a word, but contemplating whether or not they have what it takes to continue on this journey and get the program where it needs to go. Is that ultimately what he decides? Who's to say? I mean, honestly, the only person that's going to know that is going to be Kyle Whittingham. And he's going to keep that very, very tight to the vest, as he has in his past when this has kind of come up. So, it'll be interesting to see what happens. It'll be interesting to find out if actually a decision hasn't already been made. Who knows what's going on with that. What I do think and what I do feel confident about, though, is, like I said, there's just going to be some tough conversations in that building in this offseason, which starts shockingly early for this team for the first time since 2013.
I mean, 4-0 start to at least losing 7 of your last 8. And then obviously if you fall on Friday, very real possibility with how this team's looked. And obviously down to Batari now, even though he did some good things on last Saturday, but just when you go that deep into the depth chart, it's going to be tough to win a cross-country road game when UCF is also trying to end their season on a high note. And, yeah, I mean, the fact this team isn't bowl eligible when they started 4-0 is just the way they've lost all of these games with chances, plays to maybe win and just consistently losing games. That's where you have to have tough conversations because what was on the table for Utah, potential historic season, everyone's preseason pick to be Big 12 champs. And you don't just fall short of that. You fall like drastically. And that's not even like selling it to how badly this team is obviously outperformed that. Then there has to be changes made up and down your program. So it'll be interesting to see what those are. And one change that could be made not change, but well, coming into the year, it would be a change is Cam Rising, because of when he did get hurt, he would be able to make his decision on whether or not he's going to return to Utah in the next week to 10 days, Kyle Whittingham said. So for me, when I look at this, I can't, Michelle, I can't see a world where Utah wants to do this again with Cam, or Cam wants to do this again. We've heard recently again, like Cam is frustrated, like just all the crap he's continued to get from the fans and everyone from not being able to play when he wants to be out there. He wants to go out there. I love what Cam Rising's done for this program. I don't think if you're Utah, like we take our emotions out of what Cam has meant for this program, I don't think you can move. I don't think you can go into the next season saying, hey, Cam Rising is our quarterback. And he has the injury history that he has. And I can't imagine Cam wants to come back with everything he's had to go through, as I mentioned. So I know he said he's going to take the next 5 to 10 days. I just have a really hard time seeing Cam Rising being on Utah's roster next fall.
That'll be an interesting thing to watch. I've heard some interesting things both ways. Again, I think there's a lot of tough things that Cam has had to weigh and probably is still weighing, and that Utah has to weigh when it comes to Cam Rising. It's how much do you want to beat up your body at this point? It's how much do you really want to beat yourself up? Because some fans have made up their mind and have been disgustingly rude. I will throw that out there. And without, I think, knowing the full details or the full story, because Cam hasn't been able to speak for himself because of how the program runs their policy on injuries. So a lot of assumptions have been made by some people, and we all know what assume stands for. When you assume something, you make it of you and me. So it's some of you are wearing that very proudly. I will say that, just forthright. But it's, do you move on to the next phase of your life? What does that look like? Is it still at Utah as a GA? Do you want to go someplace else for a fresh start? Do you want to do something completely different than football? Do you feel like you still have something left to give to football? And if so, do you want to continue on with Utah, or do you want to maybe go someplace else? And then the questions start coming in. Well, if you do stay at Utah, there probably has to be some agreements and some parameters put in place. I think this is a case where he probably would have to earn it. If he comes in, I think this is at the point where Utah would have to say, you're not the incumbent starter, but you are more than welcome to stay and compete for the job. We'll bring some other people in, and hopefully they'll be comfortable also competing for the job. At boosters and some of that may, decide that they don't want to spend as much NIL on that. And it just depends on, are all parties agreeable? But like I said, I think there's a lot of tough conversations that have to be had in that arena. I think Cam's had to mull over a lot of tough things. And it'll be interesting to see where his mind's at, because he has been through the ringer, both physically and emotionally over the last couple of weeks. And it'll just be interesting to see where his headspace is at and where he kind of envisions himself moving forward one way or another.
It will be. And it's a very complicated situation when you talk about just what has happened with Cam Rising. And I totally agree with what you said too about the way that fans have treated him and what they've said about him when they don't know the extent of the injuries and how this is a guy who fights so hard to be out there. And it's just, I feel so bad for him that he's had the horrible injury luck that he has. And and what you said, Michelle, there's a lot of big decisions that Utah football has to make. One decision they don't have to make this week: who's going to be their starting quarterback? Luke Pittari played well last week when he came in late, but there's no controversy because of who's going to start, because Isaac Wilson is officially out for Utah's final game, so therefore out for the season.
Game Time has a new feature for your ticket buying experience called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to your favorite live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only the incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. No one wants to do that. Curation makes it easier to save more, to save time, to save money on concerts, sports, comedy, theater, and more near you. You take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app Create an account and use code Locked On for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, create an account and redeem code Locked On for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time.
It's Clemson Hate Week. We are back.
You are Locked On Gamecocks, your daily podcast on the South Carolina Gamecocks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into Clemson Hate Week. Have you hated someone from Clemson today? I have. I met my girlfriend's brother, who is a Clemson grad, and had some words with him about what's at stake this weekend in Clemson, South Carolina. I think it was a Memorial Stadium. I don't even know. It's fake Death Valley. But what's at stake? Let's start off with the basics. In-state rivalry. Battle for Palmetto State, Big Thursdays, they used to call it growing up, like a long time ago. Some of you guys might be too young for that. There's a lot at stake, especially with pride and all the in-state bragging rights and all that kind of stuff. Everyone in the state, you're either Clemson or you're South Carolina. There's really no in between, and everyone knows that. And it is a big weekend because this is a weekend where I think a lot of Clemson fans thought, like last year especially, oh, you know what? It's a return to order. We're going to win. We had that fluke that happened in Clemson a couple of years ago. This won't happen again. We're ready to go. And they have I think it was like 16-7 or some low scoring game. I think. Now you have this year, and there's a lot on the line. There's in-state bragging rights. There's battles for recruits in state. Putting up a fence around your state, no matter what state you're in, is a very, very big deal. It's a very, very big deal. But bigger than just that is the fact that looming around the corner is a potential shot at the college football. The other thing that's at stake, this is something I brought up weeks ago. Not a lot of you were happy with me when I did. That's fine. I think I prefaced it by saying don't kill the messenger. So don't kill the messenger. But there's a playoff bid potentially at stake. Here's the thing. When we started talking about this a couple weeks ago, one of the things that was brought up was it was a small chance. It's a small chance that South Carolina was going to be able to make the playoff with, the 3 losses. And they had like all the things that were in front of them that had to happen. I said it on here. I was going through it. And I said, I was like, listen, there is a path. And I started reading off the Brad Crawford tweet and going over all the things that had to happen. And that was like a laundry list, like a kid's Christmas wish list that just didn't stop. And at the end of it, I even said, I was like, I wish I didn't bring that up because I feel like it's not possible. But here's the thing. It is. And all the things that have had to happen for South Carolina to get there so far have happened. Now you need to win out this game. Right? You need to win this game. But everything else that had to happen has happened so far. All right, we paused a couple of times. So I don't remember exactly where we were, but let's just get back into this. We brought this up. All the things that had to have happened for South Carolina to make the college football playoff have happened. Like Bama lost, Ole Miss lost. Now, there's a case that you could make for Ole Miss that if they're 9-3 and they've beaten South Carolina, then sure, the results on the field have to matter. The committee has tried to somewhat say that. At least people around the committee have said it. But there's just this overwhelming feeling and this groundswell of support. It's a phrase I keep using over and over and over again, that even if South Carolina has the current longest active winning streak out of any team in the SEC. It's 5, which is wild, but that's still the case. So if that's the case, and they have a 5-game winning streak, as longer than any other team in the SEC, I know they played an FCS team on Saturday, but they beat the brakes off of them. You saw the way they beat A&M. You've seen the way they beat these other teams. You better lose. Like the case that they have made for these other teams, it's a quality loss, it's a close loss, it's blah blah blah. All of those same cases can be made for South Carolina. There's 3 losses. However, most of those losses were very, very close losses. They were losses in terms of what's the best way to put it? You lost by 2 points on the road. right? Like everyone knows how big of a deal and how big of an impact SEC officiating has become this season. Like there's just no other way around it. And that loss against LSU is like pretty excusable. Also, all of those losses came early in the season. And again, you've done nothing but win convincingly since then. So I've said this before, and I will say it again. The idea that South Carolina can make the playoff is a pretty, I'm not saying it's a better shot to make it than not. What I am saying is this. We've talked about this for 3 weeks. The first week we talked about there's a 14% chance they would make it. 14%, not great, right? There was like 20. Following week, it was 14. Last week, it was 12. As I said, all the things that had to happen happened. The ESPN All-State Playoff Predictor, if they win out, is now for South Carolina 58%. 58%. It's a really big deal. And making the playoffs as a 9-3 team and the only 9-3 deserving team from this conference, there's one thing that I think is very true from all this is that the SEC is going to try to get as many teams in as possible. The Big Ten has 4 locks. Indiana, Ohio State, Oregon, Penn State all have a 98% chance or better to get into the playoff. The SEC is not going to want to feel left behind and held out of the playoff, right? Georgia, Texas, Tennessee, all with overwhelmingly positive chances or odds to get in. Georgia's like over 90%. Tennessee, I think, is over their 70%. As long as they beat Vandy, they're in. And you have Texas, which is whatever. Because if Texas loses this weekend, they might be out. But that being said, you've seen Greg Sankey try to go to bat for the SEC and say, listen, we want a guaranteed 4 teams in. That's one of the reasons they're going to go to 14 teams. He wants a guarantee that, hey, listen, we're getting this many teams in. If they don't get them in, what other conference is going to sneak in a team over the SEC? You're not going to get 2 group of 5 teams, so you can cancel that out, right? The Big 12 is most likely not going to happen because you have no one that's undefeated from there anymore. Colorado just lost to Kansas, who's 4-6 or 5-6 now. You have BYU, who lost again to Arizona State, so Arizona State could get in. Whoever wins the conference will get a automatic win. So you're talking about like a Arizona State team. I think it's 9-2. If they win out, then they can be 10-2, maybe 11-2 if they win the Big 12. But you're not putting 2 Big 12 teams in there. The only other option that you started to see from the odds is the ACC. And who's the team they're talking about from the ACC? It's Clemson. If Clemson can win out, they would have a good shot at getting in. But here's the thing. If that same team that you've been propping up saying that you're going to win, if they win, they could potentially be in. If they lose, then the team they lose to would theoretically be just as deserving, and that's South Carolina.
Game Time has a new feature for your ticket buying experience called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to your favorite live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only the incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. No one wants to do that. Curation makes it easier to save more, to save time, to save money on concerts, sports, comedy, theater, and more near you. You take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app. Create an account and use code Locked On for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, create an account and redeem code Locked On for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time.
You are Locked On Buckeyes, your daily podcast on the Ohio State Buckeyes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Jeff, the first thought in my head is about number 18. And he did some good things. He's done great things all year in the 11 games that he's played in the Scarlet and Gray. And I don't know about you, Jeff. I'm going to throw this statement out there. I'm going to hear your reply in a second. I believe Ohio State can rely on Will Howard in this game to snap the 3-game losing streak.
I absolutely do, Jay. When Will Howard chose Ohio State last spring, I remember, honestly, that was what kind of flipped the switch and got, Ohio State, fans, out of the doldrums, move on to the next page. I was a big Will Howard fan because I just accidentally got to watch, several of his games. And of course that, Big 12 championship game just sticks in my head of how impressive that was in the moment. And I thought he, checked every box for what Ohio State needed. And boy, has he been better than I thought he could have been. This isn't a guy that they've had to help out. This isn't a guy, that they've had to drag along. This isn't a guy that they've had to rely on the athletes around him to bail him out, a little bit like we had to last year, it's completely opposite. Chip Kelly's been able to run the offense that he wants to run. Now it's not perfect. Sometimes it looks perfect, but it hasn't been perfect, but he's still able to run. He doesn't have to just, result in, just take your best guy and throw it to him. Jeremiah Smith could have won every game for him and had 20 catches like we did Harrison last year. That's not what we had to do. When Will Howard's been called, he's thrown great. I thought, it's little stuff like the touchdown he threw to Egbuka last weekend. I thought was beautiful. He ran the play. He threw it at the exact right time, which is what we complain about with quarterbacks. He threw it exact right time, exact right pace, exact right arch, he made it catchable. He threw it over the defender, just little things like that. When he they call people like a system quarterback or whatever, game manager and all that. Like, no, he's running the offense. He knows where the read is. He's recognizing. Well, here's what I like most about Will Howard. He throws to a lot of open receivers, which tells me he's seen open receivers.
Yes.
These guys aren't making contested catches play after play after play. His deep ball, it's not going to get any better. Okay. We know that that's a deficiency. He's not CJ Stroud. He's not Justin Fields when it comes to that, but I don't think it's killed him. In the future, that's a whole different thing if things go well, but as of right now, it's better than expected. I think the whole season has been on Will Howard's shoulders and he's accepted it. He looks relaxed. He looks like he's enjoying it. He looks like he understands the moment. So absolutely. I think that this is a Will Howard game. This is where Will Howard can become an Ohio State legend in this game.
I think it's a good way to look at it because what he's done so far, even if you look at the Indiana game, look at the Penn State game, and even the Oregon game, like I know it was a loss, he was mere seconds from doing everything he needed to do in that moment to win the game. He understands how to rise to the occasion, and he made a mistake. Like he literally mismanaged the clock. James Franklin does it all the time. So like that stuff is stuff that happens all the time where guys happen to do that. He's never really been on that stage before. He's never played in Austin Stadium. That's a very weird and odd place to play. So he made a mistake. He has learned from it, though. Ryan Day's learned from it. Chip Kelly's learned from it. And I think the biggest thing for this week, where things are different, in Happy Valley, where he realized, look, last drive of the game, I ain't throwing the ball. You need me to get a QB sneak to get out from the end zone being right at our back? Cool, I'll go 4 yards on a QB sneak. Most quarterbacks don't want to do a QB sneak at all. If they do, it's a 1 yard or 2 yard, and we're good. Will Howard's like, no, if you want me to get 5 or 6 or 7, like I'm 6'4", 235. I can do that with my body, and the guys at the on the O line will help me get that done. But his enthusiasm, where he called Happy Valley, Sad Valley at the end of that game, but then when he kind of punched that last touchdown in at the end of this past game against Indiana, and he did the OH, and then he just like fist pumped in the air, and the excitement and enthusiasm there, that's a guy you can rely on. He's not being asked to throw for 300 yards, but he can do that if they need him to. He's not being asked to run 10 plus times, but he can do that if Ohio State needs him to. You can rely on a guy like that who just understands his job and runs the offense the way Chip Kelly wants it to be ran. I understand Michigan's defense is going to throw things at Ohio State that they haven't seen all year. And when that happens, Indiana did that same thing. Will Howard rose to the occasion. I believe they can rely on him once again, which is weird because I wasn't really sold on his arm, Jeff, coming into this season. He wasn't really the most accurate passer. This year, he's had 6 games of being at least an 80% passer. So the biggest thing you want from your quarterback that was a question mark from him is now a strength for him. You can rely on a guy like that.
And let me tell you, I was in Columbus, Ohio I wasn't at the game, but I was very close to the stadium during that game. That was not I didn't want to go outside, let alone go outside and play football, let alone, I believe he went 22 for 26.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And he makes it look effortless.
Yes.
Again, he's running an offense. He has an offensive coordinator that knows what he can do. And he's made, I don't know, he's made 10 throws this year that I'm like, okay, when we need that throw, at least we know he can make it. And that's what's been so impressive. But it looks like his teammates like him. It looks like, let's face it, the quarterback is what the team is going to be decided by. This team, we know it's around. It's been like this for years. If the guy behind center is one of those dudes, Ohio State's very good. And so, like, when you're that good, like, your team is with you. You know what I mean? They got your back. It doesn't look like there's any complaints. I mean, Jeremiah Smith, we know you could do whatever you want, Jeremiah Smith. He could have whatever type of season he wants, but he realizes, like, that's not what we're here for. And this team has also been coached, and whether right or wrong, we don't know if it's going to be a mistake yet. This team has been coached as if it's going to play 4 or 5 more games this season.
Correct.
And so there's a lot of yardage left on the table. There's a lot of meat on the bone with this Ohio State offense. And, so I just think the way Howard's handled it and took the brunt of it, and is really ready, never looked scared. And let's face it. I mean, I know we talk about this all the time. The throw that he made that got called back against Oregon was a game-winning, great throw.
Yes.
So I give him credit for making the play, because he doesn't know it's going to be, pass interference until they call it. So he made the throw, the key throw, and, Smith made the catch. So, like, that gives me hope. I think he's totally aware, of what this game coming up is going to mean. He seems like a kid who understands just the history of college football and the impact of college football. So, and man, we're really lucked out with getting a guy and a leader like Howard this year for Ohio State.
Jeff, one of those throws you talk about, how he could just make the throw. I'm still sitting here as you're talking, thinking about that 3rd and 35, then the 4th and 10 to Carnell Tate. And I was literally watching the game, and I'm thinking, okay, it's 4th and 10. You're going to settle for a long field goal. Will Howard's still on the field, and they go out there and throw that dot to the Carnell Tate. I'm like, what in the world is this? What am I watching? Like, this is not what I expected Will Howard to do, but his arm has been so much better, and he's able to make the Oregon throw. The throw, I mean, even the confidence that he made in the throw to Jelani Thurman along the back of the end zone after Jelani Thurman dropped the ball, was intercepted. He's like, hey, man, I got you. Put it right in the same spot again. Now, granted, the ball was wet, and so maybe the ball was slippery, impacted Jelani Thurman, but Jelani Thurman still had both hands on the ball.
Yeah.
He's supposed to catch it. He dropped it. He's like, hey, man, I know what happened earlier. I got confidence in you. Let's try this pitch and catch thing again. So
that's a good point. That's a great point
weird,
to
man.
bring up. That was a great looking play. And with all the pressure on, and that's a point in the game to where, like, man, we've almost got this one wrapped up. Let's go for it. Let's go for the kill shot. But to be able to calm yourself down and make that throw, that's some stuff that, like, CJ Stroud could do.
Mm-hmm.
Those are some things. And that's what a quarterback has to be able to do in the height and the excitement and the adrenaline's pumping, calm yourself and throw it exactly to a guy that, maybe overthinking it a little bit, but he didn't. Congratulations to Thurman too. But that's also my whole point, is like, this team, like, believes. They really do. It's a different me. I'm never one for the intangibles and the belief and the mental stuff. This team, it's all this, especially this week, it's all mental. This game is all, this team's better than the team up north. This team is better. It's all mental this week. It's the focus. It's the not making, the little bonehead plays. It's getting past that, terrible interception, that Howard got. Like, it really wasn't on him, but whatever it was, and to come back and play the way he did. That's the little things that these guys have to be able to get past and not panic when Michigan throws a kitchen sink at them. So all great stuff. Yeah. I mean, just like I say, again, over and over, he's just made the right throw, and just the touch he's been able to have in heightened moments has been awesome.